Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for being here today. General, in the war between Russia and Ukraine, who do we want to win?
Sir, I want Ukraine to win.
Is Russia America's friend?
I'm sorry, sir, I couldn't quite hear your question.
Is Russia America's friend?
I think that depends on your definition of friend. I think it's a complicated relationship. But no, I don't think they're our friends.
Thank you. If we could cut off Russia's cash flow, which depends substantially on its sale of oil, would that help Ukraine win?
So I think militarily, anytime you can restrict resources and cash flows against an adversary,
General, I
that's a
have
good
so
thing.
much respect for you.
Yes, sir.
But I have so little time.
Yes, sir. I'll try to be
Just
briefer.
Give me succinct answers.
Yes, sir. It would assist a.
Would help, wouldn't
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. If we could stop people, entities, and countries from buying Russia's oil, that would help cut off its cash flow, wouldn't it?
Yes, sir.
We have a bill to do that, as I'm sure you're aware. We have the votes today to pass it overwhelmingly. I also have enormous respect and admiration for our majority leader, Senator Thune. But I hope everybody on this panel will today contact Senator Thune and ask him to bring that bill to the floor. We should vote on it at a minimum of next week.
Pay close attention to what happened here, because this wasn't just another Senate hearing. This was a moment where Senator John Kennedy cut through the political talking points and forced Washington to confront a simple question that many Americans believe should have an obvious answer. If Russia is America's adversary, if Ukraine's victory serves American interests, and if Russia's war machine depends on oil money, then why is Washington still talking instead of acting? Watch how Kennedy methodically backs officials into answering that question. It only took a few minutes, but the implications were enormous. When Kennedy asked General John Caine who he wanted to win the war between Russia and Ukraine, the answer was immediate. Ukraine. No hesitation. No ambiguity. Then Kennedy asked another question. Is Russia America's friend? And that's where things became interesting. Instead of a simple answer, the general initially described the relationship as complicated. Now, to be fair, international relations are complicated. But Kennedy wasn't asking for a university lecture on geopolitics. He wasn't asking for a diplomatic analysis. He was asking a straightforward question that millions of Americans already think they know the answer to. Eventually, the general acknowledged that Russia is not America's friend. And that was the moment Kennedy was waiting for. Because once those two facts were established, Kennedy moved directly to the issue he really wanted to discuss: money. Specifically, Russia's oil money. For years, Russia's energy exports have been one of the most important sources of revenue for the Kremlin. Oil sales don't just generate profits, they help finance government spending. They help sustain military operations. They help keep the machinery of war running. And Kennedy's argument was incredibly simple. If Russia depends on oil revenue, and if cutting that revenue weakens Russia, then why aren't we doing everything possible to shut that money stream down? Notice what happened next. Kennedy didn't make the argument himself. He got the general to make it for him. When he asked whether restricting Russia's cash flow would help Ukraine. When Kennedy asked whether restricting Russia's cash flow would help Ukraine, the answer was yes. When he asked whether stopping countries from buying Russian oil would weaken Russia financially, the answer was yes again. Those weren't Kennedy's claims. They came directly from the witness. And that's what made this exchange so significant. At that point, Kennedy wasn't really debating military strategy anymore. He was highlighting what he sees as a gap between Washington's words and Washington's actions. The argument was simple. Russia is not America's friend. Ukraine should win. Russian energy exports generate major revenue, and reducing that revenue could make it harder for Moscow to sustain the war. If all of those points are true, Kennedy believes the next step is obvious. Bring the sanctions bill to the floor and hold a vote. That's why he immediately shifted the conversation to legislation. The hearing stopped being just about foreign policy and became a debate about political will. Kennedy argued that the support exists to pass the bill. In his view, the real question is not whether lawmakers agree, but why action has been delayed. You could also hear the frustration in his tone. He repeatedly pushed for direct answers instead of lengthy explanations. For many viewers, that's why this exchange stood out. It wasn't just about oil, sanctions, or military policy. It was about accountability. Kennedy left Washington with a simple question. If cutting Russian oil revenue would weaken Moscow and help Ukraine, then what exactly is Congress waiting for?
Some of my colleagues, General, want America to just stop in Iran. End the blockade, bring all of our warriors home. What would be the consequences of that, in your estimation?
Sir, I think termination criteria is always a political decision. However, I assess that Iran will continue to be a challenge moving forward, so we have to be thoughtful
Will
about
they
that.
put tolls on the strait?
I don't know, sir. That's a decision that's a hypothetical and will depend on what happens
It's not
in the future.
hypothetical. We've got a blockade to stop them.
We do, sir. That's
General,
putting
I want you
economic
to look me in
pressure
the
on
eye.
Iran.
I'm not asking you for, I'm not trying to get you in trouble. I know your advice to the president is private, but this is serious as 4 heart attacks and a stroke. Now, what happens if we come home and end the blockade to the world?
Sir, Iran has the potential to continue to be a threat, and we will need to prepare military
Will they
options to
toll
do
the
that.
strait?
Sir, that's a hypothetical question, and I don't know the answer to that.
Oh, it's not hypothetical. We come home. It's not going to be hypothetical. You know that, General, and I do too. And I appreciate your discretion, but we're down to it. We need some hard answers and some straight talk. What will happen, Pete?
Senator, I would agree with the chairman, but the likely outcome is they would try to impose their will on the waterways in ways that the world would not like. Call it a toll, call it a fee, call it an exchange, call it control. They would do something that they would try to hold it at issue. Yes, sir.
Would they try to commence development again of a nuclear warhead?
Part of the reason President Trump had to have the courage to do what he did after Midnight Hammer is that they didn't give up their ambitions even though their nuclear sites had been obliterated. So this is a regime hell-bent on nuclear ambitions, and
Guys,
President Trump's
we need
been willing to
straight
go after them.
answers. We need straight answers. Do we have the ability to destroy whatever is underneath Pickaxe Mountain?
Senator, a lot of our capabilities are classified, but if anybody in the world can reach anything on God's green earth, it's the United States military, the most powerful military in the world. It's all about options and trade-offs.
All right. I'm going to take a little extra time because others got it, Madam Chair. I won't abuse it. Secretary, are shrimpers farmers?
Absolutely, yes. There are farmers of the sea.
Are oyster harvesters farmers?
Yes. In this USDA,
They
yes.
having to compete with other countries who grow oysters and shrimp in a ditch and shoot them full of antibiotics?
100% yes.
And if you eat too much of that foreign shrimp and oysters, you'll grow an extra ear, won't you?
I'm not sure about that, but I know it is not good. And I also know we import 90% of our shrimp.
Why aren't we inspecting the shrimp and the oysters from abroad?
Well, it goes much larger than that. Why are we importing so much from abroad, which goes to the president's trade agenda?
I'm in big trouble.
Yes, you are.
Guys, look, we need straight answers now. We're down to it.
What happened here wasn't just a Senate hearing. It was a rare moment where Senator John Kennedy refused to let Washington hide behind carefully crafted answers. Watch this exchange closely. Kennedy asks a straightforward question. What happens if America backs off, ends the pressure campaign against Iran, and walks away? Instead of a direct answer, he gets caution. He gets qualifiers. He gets the word Washington loves most when a question becomes uncomfortable, hypothetical. And that's the moment Kennedy pushes back. Because from his perspective, there is nothing hypothetical about it. His argument is brutally simple. If Iran remains hostile to American interests, if Iran has repeatedly threatened stability in the region, if Iran still possesses the ambition to rebuild and expand its influence, then pretending nobody can predict the consequences of reduced pressure isn't realism. It's avoidance. That's why Kennedy's frustration keeps growing throughout the exchange. He isn't trying to trap the witnesses. He isn't looking for a political soundbite. He's demanding what millions of Americans believe they deserve from their government, a clear answer. At one point, Kennedy practically says what many people watching were likely thinking. Stop talking like this is a classroom exercise. Stop pretending the stakes are theoretical. Tell the American people what you believe will actually happen. And after repeated pressure, Pete Hegseth finally gives the kind of answer Kennedy had been seeking from the very beginning. The likely outcome, according to Hegseth, is that Iran would attempt to exert control over critical waterways and use that leverage to advance its interests. In other words, the threat doesn't disappear simply because America decides to look away. And that's the heart of Kennedy's argument. He believes weakness creates opportunity. He believes America's adversaries pay attention to hesitation. And he believes that pretending difficult outcomes are unknowable only makes bad decisions easier to justify. What makes this moment so compelling is that Kennedy wasn't arguing over a minor policy disagreement. He was asking a fundamental question about leadership. When national security is on the line, do leaders tell the public what they genuinely believe is likely to happen? Or do they retreat into carefully scripted language designed to avoid accountability if they're wrong? That's why this exchange landed with so many viewers, because it wasn't really about procedure. It wasn't really about Senate rules. And it wasn't even just about Iran. It was about whether Washington still knows how to speak plainly. For several minutes, Kennedy kept pulling the conversation back to one unavoidable reality. The world doesn't stop being dangerous because politicians refuse to describe the danger. And whether you agree with Kennedy's conclusions or not, one thing is impossible to miss. He walked into that hearing looking for straight talk. And he wasn't willing to leave until somebody finally gave it to him. The question now is the same one Kennedy was asking in that room. If America's leaders already know what the most likely outcome is, why are so many of them afraid to say it out loud? Before you go, I want to hear your opinion. Senator John Kennedy raised two big questions in this hearing. First, if cutting Russia's oil revenue would weaken Moscow and help Ukraine, should Congress move faster on tougher sanctions? And second, if America's leaders already know what reduced pressure on Iran could lead to, should they be more direct with the public about those risks? No matter where you stand politically, these are serious questions that affect foreign policy, national security, and America's role in the world. So what do you think? Do you agree with Kennedy that Washington spends too much time debating and not enough time acting? Or do you believe these issues are more complicated than they sound in a Senate hearing? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read as many comments as I can, and I'd love to hear your perspective. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more coverage of major political hearings, congressional confrontations, and the stories the mainstream media isn't fully explaining, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next report. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.